brain just went like all the urges inside.
I tried to do a soft start.
Yeah, all the urges are like, hello, hey.
Men så här, att det är det jag har svårt att på riktigt.
Max power, I'm about to go, we doing better. If I ever lose, I don't know, faster than ever. If I ever lose, I don't know, we doing better. Hitting all the goals I can.
Are you nervous?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is this your first? Would you say this is your first podcast episode, or that this kind of?
Yeah. Like
conversation.
we've interviewed people, but with a very like focused point of like, okay, we're going to talk about different topics.
Right.
And the fun thing is, I had something prepared, which is gone. So we're just going to fucking talk to each other.
How did that feel? I asked you basically to throw away your questions and your preparations.
I'd like to say liberating, but yeah. But the thing is, like you know, the other night we spent an evening that ended with karaoke and chaos, and I didn't need notes for that, so.
Right.
But yeah, like the fun. I think the fun thing is, you know, obviously seeing your show a couple of weeks ago in Stockholm, to see like you're at the end of this period of Hur kan vi live, yourself and Victoria, like that journey that you guys have been on.
Yeah.
To see that finish, and then now to get to know you, but it's it's like trying to like remove what I've seen on the screen to this fucking strange, weird fucking person, where I ask a simple question about your tattoo and I get a story about a suicidal single mom. So, what has created this disruptive person that you are?
That's the fun part of that question is that when you say that I'm disruptive, I don't feel disruptive. That's like when people ask me why I'm being so provocative. It's like, I'm not. That's how you perceive me. That's one of the effects of me just being me. And what that feels like inside of me is not provocation or did you say strange?
In a positive way.
Yeah, sure. But that was the word you used. I just want to use your word. So I don't. Yeah, sometimes I feel alienated because I think the world is strange. I think the world is weird, and I never go like I'm going to provoke. I'm just so curious in a sometimes obsessive way. I need to understand. I need to go deeper and go behind the social code and the made up politeness and the whole fake, you know, I just want to burst the fake bubble of politeness and social code, because there's something raw behind that, and that sparks my sense of aliveness.
Right? Yeah, because like learning about, obviously, you know, Samtal extremist, but like learning about you through a very amazing and dear friend of mine, Maria, who pointed you out a couple of years ago when we were working together on a newspaper, and then when we were conceptualized and putting together Framåt, and we were, you know, our focus is, you know, to remove politics and ideology and all the nonsense that like keeps us apart and to bring people together. And she's like, you gotta listen to this guy, you gotta listen to this guy. Sent me links, and then eventually she sent me the TEDx talk he done in Gothenburg that was in English.
Right.
And I was sitting on a train and I was like, fuck this, yeah, okay, now I get it. But then kind of learning a little bit deeper into the fact that you were, like, obviously from the talk, you were an activist that was reacting to a situation that you didn't like. So, okay, disruptor, there's like that passion. But then the ability to switch, that was like quite curious to me, because some people get stuck in, this is my fucking campaign, I'm gonna I have my ground, I have my morals. Like, if we take steps back, when I mentioned disruptor, like, have you always had this, everyone's going that way, I wanna know what happens if you go the other way?
I think that it always made me curious to go the other way, not to be in opposition, but I mean, what if there's something there? It's like, going into the woods. There's an old poem by Robert Frost, The Road Less Taken. You know that one? I think...
yeah, Road Less Traveled, yeah.
Road Less Traveled, right. So the poem is basically about standing in front of a forest, and there's two roads. One is like bright, and it's a very illuminated path, and there's birds chirping, and it's kind of Disney-fied.
Yeah, it's manicured almost. It's
right?
like ready.
So you have the Disney road on the left. It's the road that all the people have been walking. That's like the norm, right? Yeah. And then you have the road less taken on the right. And that road it's not so much Walt Disney as it is Tim Burton. It's, the trees have no leaves, and it's dark, and it's like there's no path, it's just woods, and I'm like, oh, let's go there.
Yeah. The wolves are howling. Let's go
for sure. And I'm like, of course a part of me is afraid. Of course a part of me is nervous and wondering, what are you doing? But there's also a part of me that's actually excited that I might find something new. And not only I don't do it for myself. It's not I'm gonna find something new, because that's not what drives me. My drive is basically always contribution. How can I contribute to something that's valuable for other people? So some kind of higher purpose, or like a project that's not about like what I want, but what I can do is go there. I can walk that road, because I've done it so many times that I feel like a crash test dummy. So I can try the car before you sit in. Other people sit in it, and that's basically what we did with the podcast. So we started the podcast 5 years ago because I felt that everyone is going that direction, right? And I'm really curious what would happen if we go this way. And 5 years later, there's a lot of answers to that what if question that I couldn't even fathom that in the beginning. I couldn't even imagine what would happen if we knocked on that door. We had some assumptions. So we're going to do a podcast, we're going to do it long form. There's inspiration from Joe Rogan, Sam Harris, other people around the world, or mainly the States. But we hadn't tried it in a Swedish context. And what we realized, and that was one of the, maybe not the hardest insights, but one of the insights that had the most impact on me was that by taking the road less taken, by creating a long form podcast in Sweden where we invited people that you shouldn't talk to, and where we talked about subjects that are very sensitive to Swedish culture, narcotics, prostitution, assisted death, migration, the whole polarization, left-right, nationalism, all these topics that are very sensitive for Swedes. So through the podcast, we got to know new depths of Swedish culture, which is very ironic if you look at my face, being a person that explores and mirrors Swedish culture for Swedes, and then flies over here with this Irish bastard trying to explain what I've been doing for 5 years and understanding Swedish culture. It's fun to think about it in that way. Yeah.
One thing that I thought about there is, like this maybe urge that you have to kind of go that road less traveled. What have been the negatives, like in terms of your personal life or
So I should mention one thing, and that is that I'm not so fun to fight with online, because I kind of deflate the whole I'm not that interested, like going like diving into the trenches or trying to keep the drama going and keep the fight going. So I don't get like threats. I don't get that much like harassment or bullying in that way, like a lot of people do. And there's nothing from like the extreme right or the alt-right or the like the radicalized like the whole like Nazi racist part of it. They think I'm basically a hippie and a lefty, which is very ironic.
I recently read your alt-right though, so I'm like
yeah, I read a lot of things about myself that I'm very surprised to hear. I'm a Holocaust denier, I'm a Nazi, I'm a alt-right, I'm a lot of things that I didn't know. But that mainly comes from the left, which is very ironic because, I mean, I was raised in a home with very strong Marxist, very left-leaning values, but old left, not the whole identitarian, what we call woke, which is a very vague word, I think. It's not that particular, articulate.
I think it's they're at a point now where it's just become almost the worst label. We were discussing yesterday woke capitalism and this failure to embrace this what has become an ideology. But as you said, like it's hard to pin down what exactly it is.
I mean, there's something to talk about, something to address, but I just don't think that the word woke is fair or even right. And I also think that's the way that some people in the middle and on the right use the word is not so intelligent, because it's not like those people are doing things only to reaffirm their positions, to keep their message going. There's also something to say about fairness, about caring about your fellow humans. There's also something to if you want to be like intellectually honest and not just making like a caricature of your opponent, you need to look at that as well. So I'm trying to invite a more nuanced and three-dimensional conversation about the phenomenon that we call wokeness, because there's also a lot of wokeness on the right.
Yeah.
A lot. So it's not a lefty thing. It's not a left phenomenon, because basically Netflix is a major company. Facebook is a huge company. So all these big corporations are using these parts of the whole woke, what we call woke culture, and making a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's not being left.
Yeah.
So how do we explain or explore that? It's more complex than we think, and I think we need to understand the phenomenon, because there's something to understand, for sure.
Yeah, well, I suppose actually, as you touch on there, like if you look at figures on the right who really lean into almost caricatures of what their values are for personal gain, it's pretty much the same thing. It's like you're embracing some sort of a thing that's social currency, that's real currency, that you get to benefit from.
Yeah. So all the you could see also that all the things that people on the right that accuse people on the left for being woke are doing exactly the same thing. It's like that old saying, you know, it's the kettle calling the
pot black.
What is it?
Kettle calling the pot black.
It's the kettle calling the pot black or hot? Black?
No, pot calling the kettle black.
The
'Cause the pot sees itself in the kettle.
Is the pot calling the kettle black? Yeah.
It's its own reflection, projection.
It's a projection for sure. And it's not everyone on the whole political spectrum. It's the extreme right and the extreme left. It's the radical parts of the political and ideological spectrum. I mean, most people don't give a shit. And most people just want to watch Netflix. They want to laugh at Dave Chappelle. They don't care. They want to see the old Disney movies uncut. They know, like, some of these scenes are not, like, up to date. They're not made in 2023. They know that. People are not dumb. And I would, if I were to call the shots, like on the Disney Channel, I would go another direction. I would address some of the scenes, but I wouldn't cut them out. I would use those scenes to encourage parents to talk with their kids. Yeah. So this is what we did 50 years ago. It's messed up. Yeah. So this is progress. This is not good. This is better. But if you cut out the not good, you can't see the progress. And then you think like, then
becomes a veneer then.
Of course, but also, I mean, it's inaccurate. And what we teach our kids is that, well, actually, the Spanish soldiers were kind of polite and very inclusive, and they were not. They were barbaric. We can't cut that out. We need to remember that. That was wrong. So we need to put that in stories to remember. That's what we've always done with songs and stories and rituals. You can't cut out the bad, because then it's some kind of historical collective amnesia. We need to remember the pain.
Yeah, well, there isn't any joy without it. Like it's the contrast.
Right.
You know, it's the victory. Like there's no pat on the back of where we've come to if we don't think that, you know, 100 years ago, women finally got the right to vote. But 110 years ago, men got the right to vote. It was hell for everybody. You know, and it's like there's so many of these little things that pop up where it's like life was fucking suffering for everyone. There was not this, like, you know, I think there's these different classes in society, which has its problems, but at one point in society there was a small group of people and then everyone else were slaves everywhere, you know, and it's, I think, as you said, like the rewriting of the history means, okay, well, we don't know where we've come from.
Yeah. But it's also very interesting to be alive right now, because we don't live in one culture, in one world. We don't live in one narrative anymore, because the internet disrupted and destroyed everything that we thought we knew. Everything. I mean, not only the content, not only the stories, but the structures around the stories, the concept of a story. I mean, the concept of a story is told from the beginning to the end, right? That's a story. You have a starting point and an ending point. The internet doesn't have that. There's no start, there's no end. It's a campfire, it's a circle, right? It's back
to all these different perceptions and...
I mean, there's so many different perspectives and solutions and thoughts and ideas. It's a it's suddenly a pluralistic world. It's always been a pluralistic world, but we just got a technology to start grasping the complexity of existence. Yeah. It's not linear. I mean, you shouldn't confuse the map with the terrain. The story is the map. It's a paper. It's a dead piece of wood. And then you have the terrain, which is living and reforming. And life is the terrain. And maps are useless right now.
Yeah, like I kind of think if you look at the evolution of how we consume information, obviously the smartphone has changed everything, social media, news. I think we've gone through a period where thankfully everyone now realizes that most of these legacy news media, it's all nonsense and it's all propped up based on corporate needs, and there's a narrative that is hand-fed to you. I love sometimes looking at someone else's newsfeed and scrolling. I'm like, oh, this is a different world. I wasn't aware of any of these things. And I've always gone out of my way to kind of subscribe to the New York Times and, wow, they're insane. And then also Russia Today, because I want to find out what else is going on internationally and seeing it. So running around to try and I've always been focused on that. But now we get to a stage where, okay, what gave us a problem was maybe internet and social media, but now it's the solution. Substack, independent news sources. You can find journalists, you can find people that you really fucking trust, that you connect with. You still need to have balance because you can go one way or the other, but but there's like opportunity now.
Yeah, it's almost like a well-balanced diet. Yeah. Right? You need your proteins, you need your vitamins, you need your minerals, and sometimes you need to drink or eat something that doesn't taste good, but it's good for you.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Well, your live show a couple of weeks ago in Stockholm was really that. Like, to me, it was just also trying to fucking keep on track in Swedish. Like,
I'm really impressed that you even tried, because that was 4 hours with some of the smartest, most assertive / aggressive, controversial, weird characters in Swedish public discourse. And 4 hours, and I think maybe I counted to, maybe we had 24 guests, 23, something like that. It was a lot of people. Yeah. And a lot of, they were talking over each other.
Yeah, there was a lot of impressions.
Yeah,
Some of it was like, okay, trying to stay with the conversation. There was one thing though that, like, to me, obviously, you know, what brought me to Sweden. I fell in love. I have a 12 and 16-year-old, amazing bonus kids. I'm really fascinated on like kind of Sweden as a culture and where it's going. So to see the political discussion with Richard Jomshof from SD, there was a back and forth about, you know, freedom of speech, burning the Quran, and nationalism, and it got really into it about nationalism. And at one point I thought, like, okay, like I didn't follow what he was saying, and I thought, okay, he's going to bring it together here in a way that could be slightly positive, because I think, like, in some ways, like, you know, you could sell it to people that if you want a better Sweden, you can be a nationalist. But he explained about how his family are Finnish, and he finished with a part where he said, you know, my grandmother's amazing, but she's not Swedish. And to me, that was the point where it could have been this nice moment where it's like, so I'm not 100% Swedish, but I am a Swedish nationalist, and that can be a positive thing. And it's like, even at that moment where it was like a little bit to let in. But I don't know what your impression was of that.
You won't get anything straight from a politician ever.
Point.
Until they resign.
Yeah, okay.
And then you can talk to them for real. So what got me started with all of this, the whole conversation part, was that there was an auction for charity in Sweden where the leader of the Swedish Democrats, Jimmie Åkesson, announced that you could bid on an auction to play golf with him, and all the money from the auction went to charity. And people were upset because he's a very controversial and sensitive figure because of his views and his whole stance on migration and also other topics as well. And a friend of mine encouraged me to bid on the auction to play golf with him. and to use this opportunity to have a fruitful and constructive conversation. And also, I mean, it would be an interesting symbol of me looking like me, being me, having my background and my experiences of being born in Iran and moving to Sweden with my parents when I was 2 and growing up as an immigrant kid in Swedish society, and then playing golf, right? And that's also something to notice about this. We didn't play basketball. We didn't go bowling. Yeah. We didn't go to any of these like blue collar, working class, accessible arenas. We went to a golf course. Yeah. And that was a big thing for me. I had never played golf before that. So just going to that golf club was nerve-wracking because I had this sense of I'm not supposed to be here. Okay. And then also meeting him, his whole staff, and a lot of journalists, I was very nervous. It was not at all easy to do that. Imagine, yeah. But it was also fun. So it was both. I was both nervous and excited, and those emotions are very close, right? When you feel nervous, the sensations you have in your chest and in your body are very close to the sensations of being excited. Yeah. It's on that line. Yeah. And it went great, and we got to know each other. It was a little awkward in the beginning, of course, but then we started to relax, and then after the whole game, we sat down, had lunch, and I asked him if we could sit alone to have lunch, and then something happened with the conversation, because there was no cameras, no microphones, no staff, no audience, no spectators, only him and me. And that's where I felt that we started to talk to each other as men, as fathers, as human beings. And that half an hour, that was the golden nugget. Right. That was when I felt that we really lowered our guard and actually leaned into some kind of authenticity and curiosity, but also some kind of humility, because there was no one to put an act. There was no one to put a show up in front of. It was just him and me. And then after that, I think a few years after that, I got the idea of doing that over and over again in a podcast. And when I invited Jimmy for the podcast, yeah. Right? So he was on for an episode for a conversation of a few years after the whole game of golf. And he actually said in the podcast, in the episode, in the conversation we had, that I don't remember the exact words, but he said, I don't think I can say what I think. I don't think that I can be totally myself or honest with what I think, because my loyalty is to the party right now. Okay. But ask me again after I resigned. And I was like, is that a promise? He was like, yes. When I resign, you'll get an exclusive interview, and I will tell you the things that I can't tell you right now. Okay. Well. So he was very open about that. Because I've seen interviews with a lot of politicians, and there's a before and after. They resign.
That's interesting. Well, Tilda?
You don't stop.
One last thing, Navid.
Yeah.
we are doing a lot of work with schools up and down the country. We have our national skrivtävling. A lot of our readers are students in högstadiet, gymnasiet. I would love to challenge you to look into the camera and give them something, your message. What is your message to come forward in Sweden today?
So I'm imagining that I'm in high school, högstadiet and gymnasiet, right? Okay. So high school is a good aim for, okay. So should I do this in English or in Swedish? What do you think?
Oh, maybe Swedish actually.
Yeah?
Tilda, come and join.
Kom Tilda. Okay, I can switch to Swedish for this one.
Cool.
Okay. And that camera, which one?
This one is better, is it? This thing is closer. Oh.
That one? Okej. Om jag skulle säga någonting in i den här kameran nu, till dig som tittar och lyssnar, så tänker jag mig att du kanske går på högstadiet eller gymnasiet. Jag har ingen aning om hur du har hittat just det här avsnittet, det här samtalet, men jag är glad att du har gjort det. Nu har Kevin bett mig här att skicka ut lite så här tips och lite livsråd och sådär. Jag har inga livsråd för jag är en idiot, men jag kan säga så här. Jag kan säga vad som har funkat för mig. Och det är egentligen ett ord, ett fokus som har varit det absolut viktigaste för mig. Och det är nyfikenhet. Att vara nyfiken för mig har varit det absolut viktigaste och det fortsätter vara det viktigaste. För när jag är nyfiken så lär jag mig saker. När jag är nyfiken så är jag med om saker, upplevelser, äventyr. Livet liksom bjuder ju in till en massa saker hela tiden. Och när jag är nyfiken så hittar jag de här dörrarna och ingångarna till att göra roliga och knäppa saker. Så det blir liksom både lärdomar och insikter och ny kunskap. Det blir massa nya möten och äventyr med människor och platser som jag inte hade kunnat ta mig till om jag inte var nyfiken. Men sen finns det också någonting att säga om att nyfikenhet går också att vända inåt. Att lära känna sig själv. Att förstå sig själv mer genom att vara nyfiken inåt. Att inte tro att jag vet vem jag är, att fortsätta växa och göra nya saker. Så jag lär mig mer, jag träffar mer roliga människor, jag är med om mer kul saker genom att vara nyfiken. Och det är inte alltid lätt. Det är ganska läskigt och konstigt för det är svårt att förbereda sig. Men efter ett tag så blir det så här. Det infinner sig någonting. Så här, man, precis som när du lär dig typ en sport eller om du lär dig en ny liksom, teknisk kunskap eller om du lär dig filma eller fotografera eller göra en podd eller en tidning eller vad som helst. Efter ett tag så sätter det sig i kroppen. Det är någonting som lugnar sig. Liksom. Bara, just det. Nu är jag här borta när jag känner mig nervös precis när jag ska göra någonting nytt. Och den nervositeten som jag pratade med Kevin om precis, den ligger väldigt nära excitement eller liksom spänning. Och jag har lärt mig att bli kompis med den bara. Den känns fortfarande. Jag känner fortfarande jättemycket oro, jättemycket ångest, jättemycket rädslor. Det är okej. Det är en del av att vara nyfiken och kasta sig ut. Så för mig har det funkat. Det kanske inte gör det för alla, men att vara en nyfiken idiot. Att vara en nyfiken idiot och bara kasta sig in i nya samtal, möten och sammanhang och prova nya saker och träffa nya människor. Så är det någonting jag skulle vilja bjuda in dig till att testa så är det att vara en nyfiken idiot. Basically.
Super. Tack.
Tack.